Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Steve Jewell. I'm with Community Giving, and we're very pleased and excited to have you all with us today for our webinar series. We're continuing again called Community Connections. And today, listening to our communities and building bridges. We're going to give people a chance to just all get in the room, so we could hold tight for just a minute or two. We're going to just have people log in and join the conversation or the discussion here today. So we have a number of people joining us, so we'll wait for a few minutes just for them to join us, and then we'll get started. Okay, I think we have a number of people who've joined us. Some might join us mid-course, and also we want to let people know that this conversation is recorded, and we do have this conversation available on our website if people have to leave in the middle and want to come back and view the webinar in its entirety. But again, welcome. My name is Steve Jewell. I work with Community Giving. We empower and support community foundations, our core foundations in Brainerd, Wilmer, St. Cloud, Alexandria, also in Carver County. We work to bring communities together, to engage people, connect resources, and build community. And during this challenging time, it started with COVID, we had to really change up how we do business and how we bring together community. We started this webinar series called Community Connections, and many of you who are online have been a part of those and that series of webinars over the last several months. And you know, when George Floyd was murdered, we all stopped and really had to think about what does this mean for our communities, and we needed to really focus our attention on ways we could improve how we look at race and how we can become allies and supporters of building bridges across the entire community, and in particular, how race impacts us as individuals, as organizations, and as communities. And what we committed to here at Community Giving was to spend the first time on this listening. We really feel that what is most important at this point, especially as a white person, I know for me individually, is to listen and understand how race impacts me and how I have things that maybe are different in my life and weren't the same for somebody who is not white. So I need to listen. We all need to listen. And so that's what this series is about, especially today, we're here to listen. And from listening, our hope will be that we will then turn to conversation, and in those conversations, look at ourselves as individuals, look at our organizations, and look at our communities and what changes we can make as we move forward. So thank you for joining us today. And I want to turn things over to introduce our guest today to Carl Samp. Carl is the Executive Director of the Brainerd Lakes Area Community Foundation, and he will introduce our guests with us today. Carl.
Thank you, Steve, and thanks everyone for joining us today on this very important topic and discussion. So it'll be my pleasure to introduce Calvin and Justin in just a second. Just to give you a little background, Justin and Steve and I all have a kind of a mutual connection in that Justin's parents and Steve and I all graduated from Jackson High School in Southwest Minnesota, and Justin's uncle Al is a very good friend of mine, so if you're on, hi Al. And he shared Justin's Facebook post with me, and I was just so impressed with it and reposted it on my page, and it got picked up by the national news networks, and the NBC Today Show did an interview with Justin and Calvin. I think it was on June 6th. And then they also did an interview, and Good Morning America website story on them. And the CBS San Diego did an interview with them as well. So they've hit all three major networks, and today they're here with us, and you're going to get to hear their great story live and some of the advice they have for us about how we build bridges in our communities across cultures and differences. So now I'll introduce them, and then they're going to share their story. So Calvin Mathews. Calvin has been an environmental health specialist and health inspector for 26 years with 18 and a half years in Minnesota. He inspects restaurants, mobile food trucks, daycares, swimming pools, foodborne outbreaks, mobile home parks, fairs, and festivals. And his primary duties the past 7.5 years is reviewing and approving newly constructed restaurants, hotels, mobile home parks, and food trucks. And he makes sure that everything is built to state standards. Calvin's a proud dad. He loves to travel the world. He's been in all 50 states, 2 U.S. territories, and 39 countries. So you'll see a couple of his photos from around the world there in the slide. Justin Pletcher served in the Army in Kuwait and Iraq after he went to high school in Apple Valley, Minnesota, and he has now been 10 years as a law enforcement officer. He's a sergeant in the Columbia Heights Police Department. He's worked as a patrol officer, a member of the Street Crimes Unit, as a narcotics detective, and for the last 6 years as a patrol sergeant. Justin lives in Minneapolis with his wife, Talia, who you see in the picture there, and his son, Maverick, and their dog, Prince. And I assume Prince comes from his love of the music of Prince. So Justin graduated from Arizona State University with a degree in sociology. He has a master's degree in public safety leadership from the University of St. Thomas and is currently a PhD student in Hamlin's doctoral program for management and public service. In his spare time, I don't believe you have any, but in his spare time, Justin plays hockey and enjoys music and spending time with his family. So welcome, Justin and Calvin, and I believe Calvin's going to kick us off.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Where do I start? Always at the beginning. So on May 25th of this year, white female in New York City threatened to call police on a black man simply because he had her dog. She was animated. If you didn't watch the video, you should watch it. She was animated. She was like being threatened, send help. Later that Monday, we all saw Mr. George Floyd being murdered live on TV. Sadly, that's happened often. Very next day, on Tuesday, a white man here in Minneapolis, man in the scene proved that 2 young black men had the right to be in this gym, this office complex that had a private gym. Next thing you know, it's the 27th of May. Normally in the field, normally don't work in the field. Normally work in the office, lately from my home. Since so many inspectors have been reassigned to do COVID response, I was asked when I go out in the field inspections. So on Wednesday, the 27th of May, I went out to do an inspection at a mobile home park. Don't have a state vehicle, no state uniform policy, so I did not have any type of logo or anything on my person. So I decided, before I walk around and inspect this mobile home park, let me just notify someone that I'm here. Office was closed. Small town I was in was called Hilltop. Hilltop City Hall was closed. I made a decision to call the Anoka County Sheriff's Department. Gave them a call. Took them a while, I had to call them again. Then I got a call from Officer Justin Pletcher. Sir, just want you to know, my name is Calvin Mathews. I'm a state health inspector, big black dude. I have dreads, and I'm going to be walking around a mobile home park doing an inspection. I want to let you know that I'm really an inspector, happen to be black, in case some white American calls me walking around the park. Justin responds and says, sir, I'm sorry you feel you have to need to call me. Be there in 5 minutes. You know, Justin shows up, waited for him to get out. I slowly got out. I had my ID in one hand, a business card in another hand. I said, here's my ID, here's my info. Justin's like, sir, you don't need to show me that. I believe you. Next thing you know, he noticed a bracelet on my wrist and it said Omega Psi Phi. That's a member of my college fraternity. Justin quickly said, hey, one of my classmates, a roommate from college, is a member of your fraternity. And also one of the officers on my police force, a member of your fraternity. right then and there, calmness came about me. Everything was easy. You know, I've had a few interactions with the police, never about anything other than my opinion that I was a black guy, and I was just quickly, you know, everything was easy. We talked, we chopped it up. Justin decided that he would walk with me around I did my inspection. Go ahead, Justin, go ahead and jump in. Uh-oh, I can't hear you, Justin.
There we go. Sorry,
there we go.
I was muted. From my point of view, I'm a patrol sergeant. I don't often take calls. So usually my patrol officers handle that, but it was kind of they were off doing something and it was a phone call. So dispatch gave it to me. I said, yeah, I'll take it. Give Calvin a call. And he says exactly what he says. I'm a big black guy with dreads. I'm about to do an inspection. And I said, I got you. Don't worry about it. I'm sorry you had to call. You know, if anyone calls, I'll squash it. And I think that's where I acknowledged the white privilege there, that I knew I wouldn't have had to called had I been an inspector. But even then, I didn't acknowledge it to the point where that wasn't good enough for Kelvin. He's like, yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I need you to come out here and meet with me. I need this to be handled so he felt safe, you know, and especially after what he saw in New York and Minneapolis. So I said, okay, I'll be there in 5 minutes, man. And got in my car and headed out there. And not only was, you know, coronavirus all around, so there's already this expanded bubble around all of us where maybe we would have got up normally and shook hands. We weren't doing that because of coronavirus. And then you had George Floyd's murder that happened 2 days prior. Here I am, a white man, a white police officer, speaking to a black man, not knowing, you know, there's a lot of tension right here, not knowing what he's feeling. He's not knowing what I'm feeling. He showed me his badge and I said, yeah, you know, I trust you, man. And this is the point where I think the opportunity arose and I saw his bracelet. And like you said, my roommate in college, Jarek, who's still a friend of Calvin's and mine, was Omega Psi Phi, a Q, as they call them. And I have a young black officer who's a Q. And I said, hey, you're a Q. And he said, yeah. And we talked about Jarek and my officer. And he was right. Immediately, it was just like, we could relax and remember that, hey, we're just humans. Regardless of what we look like, there's always a bridge you can find with someone. And we found that bridge. And I said, you know what? It's kind of quiet right now. Why don't I just walk with you? And I've never seen what, you know, a health inspector does. He actually showed me a pool that I didn't even know existed in Hilltop. So I didn't know there was a public pool there. You know, it's a small mobile home town that we don't have too much interaction with anymore. But we just walked around. And once we had that initial bridge created, the conversation was just natural. And I think Calvin being who he is and me being who I am, we're not shy. And we talked about George Floyd. We talked about racism. We talked about traveling. We talked about kids, because once that shield was down, the bond was natural. And the conversation that came from that bond and continues to come from that bond has been natural. And the biggest thing I took from that day particularly was when, after an hour of walking around and talking, and we even had some interactions that probably wouldn't have gone as smoothly had he not called me. He knows what I'm talking about.
Yep.
So
there was a gentleman at the park who walked up to Justin, stuck his hand out, shook his hand, didn't say anything to me. He only looked at Justin. He didn't acknowledge me, and I'm cool. I've dealt with that. And he's going on asking, like, what are you doing? Yada, yada, yada. And Justin was just cool, playing it off like, you know, I'm just here with Calvin. He's the inspector. And I just smiled. It's actually sad, but funny in a way if you look at it. And I just let him go on about his business. And he was trying to point things out. I'm like, yeah, sure. Not constantly acknowledging him. Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm here to do an inspection. Type up a report and send it to management. And then we just kept it moving.
And actually, when he did that, he shook my hand and didn't shake Calvin's.
Did not shake.
Me and Calvin looked at each other and we're like, okay, this is exactly what, you know, Calvin was concerned about and what
Yep.
the issue is, right?
Yeah.
So we continued our walk, and at the end of it, it was Calvin who made a point. You know, we took a couple pictures together. He showed Jarek and his Q brothers, and he said to me, he's like, go share this with your people, like my workers, my employees, and my friends. So I sent a text message, kind of a real abbreviated version of that long Facebook post. And they'd said, you need to put this on Facebook. And I was like, nah, that's not what I do anymore. You know, it's more for my mom so she can see her grandchild on a regular basis and stop calling and harassing me. But they kept pushing me. They go, think about it. So I like to write, and I wrote up a longer post, and I posted it thinking, okay, my friends will enjoy this. And one of my friends texted me a couple hours later, and she's like, are you seeing what's happening? You better call Calvin. And so I logged in, and I was like, oh, we're up to 2,000 shares in a couple of hours. And I text Calvin. I was like, hey, you know, I shared our story. I put a picture of us up, and it's kind of going crazy. If you're not cool with it, I'll take it down right now. And he's like, nope, the world needs to hear this. And so we just let it go. And 250,000 shares later, we're talking to Al Roker and CBS, and now we're talking to all of you. And you know that Calvin and I planted a seed, and you can see what can grow from that seed.
Yeah, like I told you, Justin, us meeting was just not by chance. It was supposed to have happened. Very next day, well, later that day, I went to Fritley to do an inspection. I'm like, Justin, going to Fritley is going to go there to do another inspection. He said, well, hey, I'll keep my ears out. In case something happens, I'll let him know you're legit. He's right. I got a phone call later saying, hey, can you send me the picture that you guys took? And next thing you know, we blew up on Facebook. And I know it actually helped because the following day, I was in Blaine, Minnesota, doing another inspection. This time, the management office was open. They were able to check in, let them know who I was. While I was walking around to do my inspection, older white couple in the early 70s came up and said, hey, you're Calvin. We saw your Facebook post. So Dave and Judy saw me on Facebook, and we chopped it up for about 15 minutes. And it could have been a lot different from my point of view, easily.
I think, you know, it's like I always say it's like that little snowball, right? We started this little snowball, and it rolls down a hill, and it just, positivity and connection and positive connection can turn into this big boulder that will literally destroy all roadblocks in its way. You know, it'll get past, you know, ultimately, hopefully racism, but it'll get past that initial, the initial hesitation, right? That
Correct.
Positivity will get through that. And that's really what it takes. It takes that 1 second or 5 seconds of bravery or chance or will
that
just to get
step.
through, exactly, to take that first step. And then all of a sudden you guys are running next to each other. You don't even know it, because it's that first step that's hard. And once you get past that, it's you realize, like we realized, oh, okay, we're cool. The rest of it was easy. And Calvin and I have both said, maybe we were a little more hesitant that day because of George Floyd and what had been going on in the national media and the coronavirus. But had we met 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years from now, we would have had the same outcome, because that's the kind of people that Calvin and I are. We're never afraid. If I see an opportunity to connect with somebody, I'm going to take it. I don't care if they're Muslim or black or white or Hispanic. If there's a reason to connect with somebody, it's our job as a human being to at least take that. And sometimes people don't want to connect, and that's fine. But Calvin and I did, and yeah, absolutely, it's their choice. And Calvin could have said, "Yeah, I'm a Omega Psi. You know, thanks for coming out. Have a nice day." But it turned out to be something else. It turned out to be a friendship, and that friendship turned out to be a message that we're sharing with everybody. You know.
Again, Justin, as I told you, on average, at least twice a year, I've been pulled over by the police. Only one time it was for actually speeding. That was in 1999. I didn't realize I was doing 65 and 55. But even that incident that happened, just moved up here, and the state patrol officer, once he saw license is valid, he asked me if I had any drugs in the car. I'm like, no. I had to wait for a K-9 unit to show up. So next thing you know, a state trooper shows up with a K-9 to walk around my vehicle. His only reason is, he says, well, you have an out-of-state license plate. I was like, can't someone from another state come to this state? Anyway.
You know what times I've had a K-9 go around my car?
How many?
0. And I have a heavy foot, so I've been pulled over plenty.
Well, look, man, things are changing. Just Monday, there's an NFL team about to change their name.
Yep.
Right? So to talk about that, so the Washington, we won't say their name, but their football team has had this logo for years, right?
Decades.
If I put a swastika on the flag and wanted to fly, people would automatically say I'm anti-Semitic. I'm just a horrible person. But yet, people will put the stars and bars battle flag and say that I shouldn't feel a certain way when I see it flying in someone's yard. I have nothing wrong with history. I love history. That history represents something that wasn't really good. And if a person don't understand that, that's good. Don't understand it, but listen to me. Just like if you fly that swastika, people are going to take it a certain kind of way. They're going to have a certain feeling. Just like this football team that's now about to switch their logo, it bothers a group of people. You can't just say it has nothing to do with you.
Well, that's what we're seeing from police departments, right?
Yep.
I mean, I have no true understanding of what it's like to be a black man in America, right? Yep. But I police black men, I police white men, white women, I police everybody. That's my job, is to police my community. If I have an entire section of my community telling me, hey, we don't trust you, we don't feel safe, we don't, for lack of a better word, like you, I can't just say, well, you don't understand my job, I'm going to do what I'm doing. My job is to make them feel safe. And if I'm not doing that, then it's my job to listen to them as to why I'm not making them feel safe. And we need to, like Calvin and I said, we need to have a conversation, because you might not understand what it is to be a police officer, but I don't understand what it is to be a black person in America. And the only way we're going to solve these issues is by sitting down and coming to some type of agreement as to what needs to change, so I can police effectively. And actually, my job isn't to put people in jail, it's to keep them out of jail. So how do I make that, whoever it is, the best person? How do I help them succeed and give them the opportunity they need to be the best person they can be? And it's not, by telling them to shut up and let me do my job.
But you just said the best thing, Justin. You got to get to know the person. I would have never known you like Prince, served in the military. We have more things in common than we don't. Everyone likes a good barbecue. Yeah. But if people don't talk, get to know, we're all similar. We all, if you have kids, they might like you now. They won't like you when they become teenagers. But you got to sit down and talk about it. If the police are always in the black community, that's where they're always policing. That's all people ever hear is black people are wicked, evil. I have dreads. I've never smoked in my life.
I have. I'm straight up. I have, and I don't have dreads.
But people always assume the worst when they say me. That's why I told you, I've been to prison.
And they assume the best when they see me, right?
Yep. I've been to prison 22 times to inspect them. Never been there as an occupant. Yeah. But again, people will judge and assume. But if you don't talk to someone, you won't realize you didn't know I love to travel as much as you did, did you?
No. And how could I have known that unless I actually talked to you? Right. Exactly. Yep. But, you're right. And that conversation needs to go further. And I think I told you this story when we had breakfast 2 weeks ago, whatever, but you have to be honest with your community, even as you're policing. And it's okay to say you're sorry. But we got called to a robbery once, and the suspect description was a young black male a teenager wearing a gray sweatshirt and jeans. And I'm on the perimeter. I see a young black teenager, gray sweatshirt and jeans. I stop him, and immediately it's confrontational. It's because I'm black. And I said, well, sir, you're right. It is because you're black, but it's also because you're a teenager, you're wearing a sweatshirt and you're wearing jeans, and I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't stop you.
Yep.
But I also promise you that if it's not you, I will bring you to where you're going, and I will apologize, because I hope it's not you, but I can't just let you go. And immediately the person was like, okay, well, I guess that makes sense. I didn't handcuff him. He got in my car. We did the show up. The victim goes, nope, that's not him. And I said, I'm sorry. I told you I would apologize. I'm sorry. Where can I bring you? And he's like, just bring me down to the gas station. He got out. He gave me a hug. And it was like, because I took the extra 30 seconds to a minute to explain my actions, rather than just to say, because I'm the police and you do what I say. I said, yes, it's partly because you're black, but that's not the only reason. And then once we had that dialogue, we were sitting in my car talking. Again, it was that extra step.
Yep,
I could tell him I'm the cop and you will do what I say, which I could have told him, right?
Yep.
But I didn't. And I said, you know what? You're right. But I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you how I do my job. And I'm going to apologize if I'm wrong. And immediately it was a different type. The confrontational aspects of it plummeted, and it became a productive conversation right after that,
But see, that's not the way most officers approach it.
I know.
Every other day, there's another video where a black person has had the police called on them for just doing the mundane things, anything. 2 weeks ago, and did I tell you about the one in Kansas? A black man was moving into his home, and it was almost midnight. And the police officer said, well, what are you doing? He said, I'm moving into my house. Like, it's almost midnight. The guy says, I have 2 jobs. And so they actually arrested the man. They hemmed him up, put him in handcuffs, put him in the back of the squad car. The guy said, I have paperwork in the house. So to me, from my point of view, if the guy says, I'm moving into my home, okay, do you have paperwork? Sure. Let's go in the house and get it. Versus, let me throw you against the wall, put you in handcuffs, and put you in the squad car. I mean, you got to have a different approach. Yes, can't be everyone who's black is automatically guilty, and then later you prove it. It's talk.
Yeah, absolutely. And it needs to go further than that. I'm going to talk to the black individual, like you said, and get to let's find out the facts. And then I'm going to talk to the caller. Be like, why are you calling? What are your reasons to believe this? And tell me it's more than just because they're black. And you have to not shame them. You have to almost retrain them that this is 2020.
Yeah.
You're 60 years behind here. I need you to know that as a police department, as a police officer, that I'm not going to automatically assume you're right because you're white. It's my job to find the truth. And if you are calling, and I've told my officers, I've called people racist. I don't recommend my young officers do it, maybe, but I've called people like, you're being racist, and I'm not going to put up with it. And 90% of the time that shuts them down, because they realize, oh, this cop isn't here for me. And no, I'm not. I'm here for my community. And that's whatever that community looks like, I'm there to serve their best interests, not an individual's best interests. So.
See, you bring up a good point. So going back to the case in New York, Central Park, Amy, what's her name? Her name is Amy Cooper. So again, I'm not saying she's racist, but she knew exactly what to say, how to say it. She played the system. She animated that this man threatening her and her dog. She was choking the hell out that dog.
Oh man,
right?
That made me almost as angry as her calling 911 as a dog lover,
Choking the hell out that dog. She's saying, quit, come, show up. So let's bring it back to Minnesota. Those officers that murdered George Floyd could have easily been the same type of officers in New York City that could have gotten other Mr. Cooper did exactly what they did. That easily could have happened. That's from my point of view. The way she said it, the quote unquote wrong officer could have came up and did exactly what happened with Floyd. That is why Black people get so upset, so angry about that. The lady knew what she was doing. It's called weaponizing your privilege. She knew exactly what she was doing, how she said it, and she made the phone call.
Yep.
I am thankful.
In 10 years, I've had plenty of those calls, you know?
Yeah.
And it's not just, obviously time, you know, is something that we have to be wary of as a police officer. But if I have the time and I get a call like that, and 99% of the time you can see right through them, you know?
Yep.
Loud barbecue in the park on Sunday at 3 p.m. I'm like, okay, it's a park at 3 o'clock in the Sunday afternoon. That's what it's supposed to be. That's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Hosting barbecues, right? So now I can
but
say
they're using charcoal.
Yeah.
That's illegal.
So I will go. They'll see my squad. I know the caller's watching. The caller will see my squad car pull up, and then I'll get out and I'll start mingling. I'll grab a burger if they offer me one, and they'll be like, "Wait a second, this cop's not telling them to leave. He's engaging in their festivities with them, you know." And it's changing the whole dynamic of the call. They thought I was there for them, and now I'm actually there to make my community feel welcome and enjoy my parks and enjoy my barbecues. And you know, if they offer me food, I'll always eat it. So, but it's
I won't.
And then it's well, yeah, don't even talk to me about your stories, because you're going to ruin half the restaurants for me.
Now, look, as a health inspector, my job is to educate and communicate. I don't go, and when I say I go, every background you can think of. When Sarah Palin said that she could get paid more because she has foreign policy experiences, I inspect all types of restaurants, Russian, Hispanic, Jamaican, you name it, I've been to it. All I care about is food safety. I'm trying to educate them on, okay, this is what you're doing wrong. Let me help you do it right. Let me show you a better way. Let me show you a cheaper way to do it. Or you're doing this, you don't really need to do this. Let's do it that way. But it's always about engaging them. I get more compliments on how I approach people and handle them versus, oh, you're the state. You're coming here to shut me down. Tell me something that I'm not doing, don't want to do. All about selling them in public.
That's a good parallel for what cops should be doing, though, right? I can go in and say, this is shut down. We're done. Or I can say, hey guys, look at, you know, I'm going to educate you on what you're doing wrong, and I'm going to give the opportunity to change, right?
Yep.
And if you don't, then eventually I'll have to come down stricter, you know, whether it be citations or arrests. But I think it's important that law enforcement agencies look at ways to better, like I said, keep people out of jail, not put them in jail.
Correct.
Come in softer and say, I'm going to educate you on what you're doing. You know, yesterday we had a call. A kid stole a $100 box of cigars. He admits to me, yep, I stole it. The store owner's like, I want him arrested. And I sat there and I mediated. And I said, how about you give him a week? I have him identified. You give him a week to pay back the $100. If he doesn't pay, I'll come back next Tuesday, whatever it was, Monday, yep. And if he hasn't paid his $100, I'll send him his citation, which is all it would have been. It's misdemeanor theft. I go, it's a citation. He doesn't go to jail for misdemeanor theft. And they sat there and they go, okay, we agree to that. And so I have an opportunity. This kid's 19 years old. He did something really stupid. I looked him up. He doesn't seem to be a bad kid. Maybe made some, you know, questionable decisions, but he's not one of these, you know, bad seeds. And putting him in the system isn't going to help him become a better part of society, right?
Nope.
Teaching him responsibility, teaching him accountability, and teaching him that there are repercussions to your actions, and giving him the chance to fix that, so he realizes that, hey, I can make better decisions for myself. And if he doesn't, ultimately, then he gets his ticket, and the outcome's exactly the same had I just give him a ticket yesterday. But now I created this week where I can say, okay, you can fix this, and you can create a more positive outcome for yourself, and putting the onus back on him, right? Like you said, educating him.
Yep. But see, there's part of the problem. Your approach right there is the way I feel officers should be, what they should do, right? Don't do the power just because you have it. George Floyd, the initial call was he was passing a fake $20 bill.
We get that
No.
call every day.
I wouldn't know if I had a fake $20 bill.
No, exactly.
Right? So when they said that he had a suspected $20 bill that was forgery, how did they approach it with it? I still have yet to see the video where this man was resisting arrest. But that is always the call, always easy to believe that this black guy was resisting arrest.
Yep.
We saw the outcome from it. Even when the ambulance showed up, or those were sheriff deputies, right?
No, that's HCMC ambulance.
Okay.
They do dress like deputies, which I don't know why they shouldn't, but they do.
Even when they showed up, that man's knee was still on that man's neck.
Yep.
Right. So again, the approach has to change. You have to educate people on this is what's going on. This is how we can resolve this. That's not always most officers, from my experience.
But I will, there's one caveat, is that because I'm a police officer, I also have to enforce what the victim wants. So had the victim said, no, I don't want to work out a deal, I want them charged, then I'm kind of at a disadvantage, right? Because then I got to charge them. So you do have to be able to talk to both parties and say, hey guys, this is what's best. And you can't sell everybody. Like, you can't sell everybody. I was able to sell them. And, and this guy knows he runs a business off of Central Avenue. He's going to lose customers if he doesn't approach it the right way. So he's a businessman too. So I knew I could sell that to him. But sometimes, I do a teen academy every year. We run one scenario where there's a racist business owner, and the students come in and they're cops, and I'm usually the business owner, and I'm telling to get whatever person out because they're Asian or black, and I tell them, well, you do have to enforce the trespass because it is a private business, but what ways can you handle it outside of that? Call the district manager, call the Better Business Bureau, talk to the person that was trespassed and say, I'm sorry, I'm going to handle this. Unfortunately, as a private business owner, he has the right to trespass whoever he wants, and he could trespass me as a police officer if he wanted to, but I'm going to work to get rid of him, and I don't want you to know that. So sometimes we are at a disadvantage because of the people that want laws enforced, but how many cops actually take that extra chance, that extra 5 minutes to talk to the victim and say, hey, I know this happened to you, but how about we work out a deal? So, it is on the cop to at least, like I said, take that first step. It goes back to that, taking that first step.
Take the first step and talk to people, get to know.
And if they say no, or the kid says no, then you do what you have to do. But at least you tried to create a positive outcome.
I've dealt with that. There's been people that I've had to send home, special events and fairs and festivals. I'm like, look, I'm the last man to want to send you home, giving you an opportunity to make some changes. And if you don't do it, I got to tell you to go. As soon as I tell you to leave, I don't argue with them. I don't fight with them. I'll go find someone just like you, find one of Minnesota's finest, let them know who I am. Say, hey, person's not cooperating. They're doing this, that, and the other that's wrong. They're ordered to leave. Now they got to go. And then they just got to go.
But that was their choice, right? You gave them
their
the choice.
They made me do that to them.
Exactly. That's what I tell everybody. I go, I didn't write this ticket. You wrote this ticket. And I explained that to them. I always put the responsibility back on them, and they'll make the choice, and then I will enforce the choice they made. So.
Do you have any questions?
Yeah.
Sure. We're ready for a question or two. I think there's about 6 queued up for you, gentlemen, so buckle up. All right, so the first one would be, what words of advice could you offer to someone who is just beginning their journey about understanding and trying to build bridges and have conversations with people of color about racial injustices? What advice would you have about that?
My question would be, do you know someone of color that you can go talk to? There's a coworker.
Yeah.
Go up, walk up to him and start talking to him and say, hey, there's a whole lot of injustices that's going on. I don't know a lot. Can you give me your point of view? Let me see it from your lens. I think one of the problems is people always see things from their own lens. And black people do it. We all do it. We only see things from our point of view. You have to stop. You have to be open, seeing someone else's point of view. And even if you don't see it or don't like it, that's okay. Okay. You don't see their point of view.
Yeah. And if possible, you know, you want to, this is why creating these relationships with people you trust is so important, because having these conversations, you're going to sound ignorant. You're going to be embarrassed. You're going to feel stupid maybe, you know, but if you have that conversation with someone you feel safe with, someone you trust, and not get in, like, you know, I told Calvin the story. I had this young black female friend at work, and boy, the Q was there, and he's really very close to me. And I touch my wife's hair all the time. She's got beautiful black, my wife's West Indian. She's got beautiful black hair. I always play with it and touch it. Now I know it's my wife, but
yeah,
hair was not a big deal to me. And Avery walked in with this brand new braid, and I went to go touch it because it was really pretty. And Troy, like throwing himself in front of a bullet, was like, no. And I go, what? He goes, never touch a black woman's hair.
No.
And I could have gotten embarrassed. I could have said, I'm the boss, you guys go do something else, go do your jobs or whatever. And I go, really? Why? And we sat down and talked for like a half an hour about my ignorance. And I wasn't embarrassed. I was really interested in how I could grow and learn from them. And that's just a small example, but we've had conversations about so many things, about me being ignorant and learning. Only way to fill ignorance is through education and knowledge, right? Otherwise, you're going to fill it with fear and ignorance. So
it's just a cultural difference.
Yeah. But you can't be embarrassed. You have to be interested, truly interested. If you want to grow, you have to be truly interested in the ignorance that you have and accept that you are ignorant in things.
Justin, I'm going to have to show you a picture when I used to have my hair bald. I used to get my hair bald every summer. 15 years ago, I started my dreads. Here we are 15 and a half years later, still have them.
I'm still trying to grow mine out from when I shaved it for coronavirus. So
yeah,
I think that's big. Just having the get past the embarrassment, get past the shyness, and just jump into the deep end.
Yeah, stop being passive aggressive.
Yeah, with someone that you know is going to pull you out, and they're not going to let you drown. I could talk to Calvin about things. I know he's gonna educate me. He's not going to push me under.
Thank you. That's really wonderful advice. Justin, there's a number of questions coming in through the chat feature about training for law enforcement officers that would be more aligned with some of the philosophy that you're sharing about how you approach community policing. So what can you say to us as community individuals about how can we help support our law enforcement officers, but also educate them so that the interactions can be more productive, like you're talking about, particularly for our youth?
That's tough. I have a lot of issues with police training currently. Minnesota is one of the few states that actually requires a 2-year degree. I know no state that requires a 4-year degree. And I think education is the first step. We give someone a gun and a badge and the ability to suspend someone's constitutional rights. They should understand the depth of those powers. It's not just as simple as arrests or citations, because the actions you take have long-lasting effects, as we've seen and as we continue to see, which is why Minneapolis burned after George Floyd was murdered. So I think education for officers is wholly important. I tell every young kid I come in contact with, don't study law enforcement, go study communication, go study sociology, study criminology, study psychology, study something that gives you ability to operate in that gray area. Because we want to act like laws are black and white, but they're not black and white. The problems that we have to solve as law enforcement officers are so many different shades of gray. You've got to be able to operate in that with aplomb and with courage and ability, and only understanding the black and white of state statutes is not going to give you the tools you need to succeed. As far as community members, we have a multicultural advisory committee. We do 5 picnics a year. We do monthly, I mean, this is pre-coronavirus, obviously, monthly coffee with the cops at different locations. If the police department's taking the opportunity to create positive interactions, then it's also the community's responsibility to engage in those positive interactions, right? We are in this together. So you can't say, you know, you can't just point your fingers at somebody. You've got to be willing to sit down and talk to them, and have those open and honest conversations and tell them your fears, your concerns, in addition to your, you know, accomplishments and the things you're proud of. So it's okay to tell a police officer they're doing a good job. It's just as important to tell them they're doing a good job as it is to tell them they're doing a bad job. So have those open and honest conversations with them, and reinforce what they're doing correctly and try to fix what they're doing incorrectly. But progress is slow, and law enforcement is an antiquated profession, one that I love, but we are, you know how government wheels turn, slow and squeaky. So it's going to be a long time before we get to where we need to go, but we can't do it separated. We got to do it together.
Thank you. Calvin, I'm wondering if you would start with this next question. How can white allies help bridge the gap between ourselves and people of color in ways that isn't about tokenization or microaggression or exhaustion of our people of color friends, and then forge connections rather than divisiveness? So if you want to start with that, and then we'll let Justin give his opinion on that as well.
Sure, I can answer that. So my opinion would be, you already said, you got to listen. Everyone has their own lens. You just can't say, well, this is how I'm going to help you. This is what you need. You have to ask the people that you're helping, what do you need? I first came here at Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. Minnesota Department of Health spent a lot of money and time trying to get Camp Ripley ready, send people from New Orleans here. No one from New Orleans wants to come to Minnesota. So they spent all this money, time, and effort saying that these people had to go here. And I'm like, these are citizens. They can go anywhere they want to. But instead of asking, where do you guys want to go? They were just automatically demanding, thinking, nope, you got nowhere to go. This is where we're going to send you. In this question, one of my coworkers, she said, well, why didn't you have on a logo that you work for MDH? Explain to her, wearing a logo is not going to stop someone from calling the police. He did not understand it. I said, the fact that I felt I had a need to call the police, just to let them know ahead of time, in case they got a call and you wouldn't have called them, shows that you don't understand your privilege. So the first thing is you have to listen to people. You might have a host of things you want to do for people. First, listen to them and say, hey, what do you need? If I saw you on the side of the road, I'm going to stop and say, hey, what do you need? How can I help you? I'm not going to say, let me change your tire, or I know what's wrong with your car. You listen.
Yeah, I mean, I'll use an example that we actually just won a community policing award, International Community Policing Award for. Several years ago, we had a young Somali gentleman arrested for terrorism in one of my neighborhoods. And it's a mostly Somali neighborhood, about 70% Somali. FBI came in, heavy, and took the guy out in handcuffs. And I think he's still in federal prison. They had an operation, 6 people within the metro area. One was in Columbia Heights. And my chief sat me down, and he said, this was, 3, 4, 5 years ago. And he goes, what can we do to fix this? And I looked at him, and I verbatim, I said, how the hell should I know? I'm not a Somali male American. Why don't we go talk to the community and ask them? And so he looked at me and was like, that's a great idea. And so we actually were fortunate enough to have 2 Somali officers who spoke Somali, and we created a survey. I had my Somali officers go door to door in uniform because I wanted to make sure they knew we were the police. I wanted to be like, hey, we're the police, but we're also you. We're together. And they went door to door and they spoke to them and said, what do you guys need? What do you guys want? How can we help you? How can we avoid this from happening? And they gave us all these great answers that we ended up turning into a community center that we built right on their neighborhood. We built them a brand new park and a community center where we hosted tenant rights classes. We're doing courts rights right now. Everything's been kind of on hold because coronavirus has been, what to do in court, what to do when you're stopped by a police officer, youth outreach. We're doing free lunches. We are doing parenting classes, all the things they said they wanted to make them invest in our community so they don't feel like, because joining a terrorist organization is the same as joining a gang. You're trying to find something that you're not getting at home. You're trying to find a sense of belonging or love or ownership or worth. And it's our job as government agencies to let them know that their worth is available to them at their very own, in their very own house and on their very own front steps and on their very own streets and in their very own schools. So they don't feel like they need to go anywhere else. So it's listening. It's listening. The best, the only way to be an ally is to listen to what they need and then respond. Not tell, like Calvin said, you don't tell someone what they need, you ask what they need.
I agree with that, Justin.
Thank you. Justin, there is a question in the question box from another law enforcement officer that happens to be listening today about stories. And they wanted to get some advice from you on ways to confront racism or racial profiling and tendencies in law enforcement right within their own department. So do you have suggestions?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
That's a tough one. Obviously, I'll just be honest with you. I couldn't work for an agency that wouldn't allow me to address it. I would have to, I can't work for an agency that wouldn't allow me to speak truth to racism within my own organization. I know that's hard. And I looked at the George Floyd thing, and I know that the one officer who was 4 days off of FTO, he's the one that asked him, should we roll him over? Should we check his pulse? The 20-year vet, Derek Chauvin, is the one that said, nope, we're going to stay what we're doing. Had he pushed Derek Chauvin off of George Floyd might be alive today, but that young officer's career would be over. And
right.
That was what he had to deal with in that incident, in that instance. And that's so unfair and just speaks to the poisonous culture of Minneapolis policing. I don't have that culture in Columbia Heights. I remember when I was 2 years on, I had a 30-year cop talking about how Somalis are always yelling at each other. And the chief was in there, and I said, how do you know if they're yelling? Do you speak Somali? And the chief told me 3 years later, when I was able to be promoted to sergeant, I am promoting you because of that day. Other things as well, because I knew you were always willing to challenge people regardless of their time, regardless of their rank. But my organization respected that. So if you don't work for an organization that respects your ability to speak out against racism and sexism and all the things affecting American workplaces, then I'd go somewhere else where you can make a difference. And I know that's like, it seems like you're quitting or running away from the problem, but some of these cultures are so toxic, like Minneapolis, that it's so unfair. But I couldn't tell you in good faith, speak your truth and it'll always work out for you, because it might not always work out for you if you're not in an agency that allows that. So you got to be careful. Until we actually start promoting people who are willing to protect others and willing to stick up for what's actually right, we got a lot of the same old, country club attitudes in this profession that is affecting its lack of growth.
But
I know it's not a positive answer, but.
No, but you said the key thing, you have to challenge the system. I mean, every culture is different. I've dealt with different cultures, people from the East Coast that I've dealt with, they love to argue, love to challenge me. And it's not, they're not being rude or disrespectful. No. It's just a culture of difference.
Yeah. You've been to Italy.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just as animated and loud as a Somali person. And what's the difference? Yep. White and black, right? No one ever asks why Italians speak loud, but they want to ask why Somalis speak loud. So that comes from ignorance. But again, speak out against it if you feel trusted and respected in your agency. And if you don't feel trusted and respected in your agency, then go somewhere that trusts and respects you.
Thank you. That was insightful from both of you. Kelvin, I think this is an interesting question that I'd like to hear your thoughts on. And this is posed in the chat box. So it says, I'm walking down the sidewalk and an African-American is walking down that same sidewalk. I want to make eye contact, smile, and say hello, which is what I've always done in the past. But today it feels different to me. It feels like I'm doing it insincerely or out of a kind of a Pollyanna sort of way. What advice do you have for me on how I can connect with kindness to strangers of color?
Well, people can normally sense your intent all about the way you do it. You're genuine about just saying hi and being friendly. A person can sense that from you. I know I can. So if you're walking by someone, you genuinely want to say hi, hey, good morning, good afternoon. Do you, be you. Don't let this whole situation change you from being you.
Thank you. Another question in the chat box to both of you actually is a statement about defund the police and what each of you think about the idea of defunding the police or what that means to each of you.
I support it. You know, I think it's a terrible term, defund the police, because it creates a lot of misunderstanding. Defund the police does not mean abolish the police. It means reallocate some of the resources going into police departments to social programs that would relieve some of the stressors that are put on inappropriately, perhaps, the police department, like mental health, some, nonviolent drug offenders, school outreach, other things that where maybe community programs could do a better job, because I'm not trained. I mean, I am trained in de-escalation. I am trained in crisis intervention. But my 40 hours of training that I got pale in comparison to a person who's actually studied it for their entire adult life. And their ability to create positive change is more lasting than the 5, 10, 15-minute interactions that I'm going to have, where my two options are hospital or jail, right?
Yep.
So try to find ways to put money into the community so we're not burdening the police with these things so they can focus on crime and disorder, which are what I am trained to deal with most aptly, right? I can go handle a mental health incident, but I'm not trained to fix it permanently. I'm trained to deal with it and put a Band-Aid on it until it falls off, So I'm not really fixing the problem.
But so that's the whole important part. Defunding does not mean demolish the police. I know we've all seen that commercial on TV, shows defund the police, what is going to happen. Same thing, social worker called a police officer and myself because there was a place, student had been going to school for several weeks, and the social worker thought it was a garbage house. Why did they call the police? I have no clue. I showed up. Was it considered a nuisance? It was. Gave the mother a couple of options, cleaned up some things, changed some things around, and again, she did it. But the police should not have been called for a suspected truancy/garbage home. Department of Health, sure.
And you think about the funding that we get, not my agency particularly, because we are properly funded, I would say. We don't have all that paramilitary or that militarized equipment that a lot of departments have. Why do we need all of this militarized equipment when most officers will go through their entire career without ever pulling the trigger? But I will spend 90% of my career talking to people and trying to communicate solutions rather than force solutions. So finding better ways to train the officers rather than just give them, I just saw that Cottage Grove has like 85 bayonets. What do you need bayonets for? And how well are you talking to your community rather than spending money on bayonets and these militarized vehicles that you may never need, but you'll need your voice, you'll need your ability to communicate and to accurately fix the problems affecting society on a daily basis. So defund the police, I'm all for it. It's just, we see in Minneapolis, they yell for defunding the police, but they have no real plan on how they're going to do it. So before you take these steps, make sure you have a plan in place. Otherwise, you're creating a social experiment that people aren't going to want to be a part of, and you're going to lose your community support. So everyone needs to be on the same page when you do defund the police, so everyone knows exactly what's going to happen.
Thank you both so much for being honest with us and sharing your story. This has been a rich conversation. We are mindful of time, so I'm going to turn it back over to Steve Jewell for some final comments.
Wow. Well, Calvin and Justin, I just want to say thank you for being with us today, but really your friendship, your relationship gives me hope. Your wisdom gives me hope that, you know, there is a path forward here, and it does start with listening. So lots of great insights this week, and thank you. Really, really appreciate you sharing your story and sharing it not just here, but in other places. And I would encourage you to continue to share that story and your relationship, because it's the hope for our communities, the hope for the future. So thanks.
Thanks for inviting us.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
We want to thank all of you who have attended today, and if you have some thoughts or ideas, please, you can email us at info@communitygiving.org. We always appreciate your ideas and thoughts as we go forward. The next 2 weeks, we will continue to listen, and we will be listening and hearing some stories from the Wilmer area and the Brainerd area next week, and the following week from Alexandria and from the St. Cloud area. So we look forward to those stories and once again listening. And then following that, we hope to engage in further conversation. And
Steve,
yes, sure.
I just want to let everyone know I'm going to send my email out to the chat here.
Okay.
Feel free to contact me with any questions or any follow-up or any, if you guys just want to talk about policing or anything. Again, I am here to listen as well. So I'm sending that out right now. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fantastic. We appreciate that. And other resources, I know a friend of mine recommended that I read the book White Rage, and I've read that now, and that was very insightful and very helpful. And there's a lot of other resources out there, and we posted them on our Idea Center. It's ideacenter.communitygiving.org. So you can check that out as well, and feel free to reach out to us or connect with our speakers today.
What about,
Justin, thank you.
What about white frailty?
That's another great resource. I personally haven't read that yet, but I know that that's another one that people have been recommending, and I got that on my list. Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. And
thanks for the invite.
Hopefully seeing you all back next week. So thanks so much. Take care.